Alright, me. It is November all of a sudden, and I just finished reading Almost Maine by John Cariani. Um, this is actually the third time I've read Almost Maine. Um, when I was in high school, this was the protection we did during my sophomore year of high school, and then in college for my acting class I had to take. Um, we actually did Almost Maine. And the reason for that is because Almost Maine is written in a way that is designed for only 4 people, but you can have up to 19 people act in it, right? Which makes it a really unique play that I don't think I've ever read or seen anything else quite like it, where you have such a diverse sense inside of it, right? It's also very accessible, right? It's not very complicated. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the actual setup and things, and actually creating the play. So in that sense, it's very accessible. So that's all that. Yeah, yeah. Almost Maine is interesting in the way that it's kind of set up, because if you go through and actually read the way that everything's supposed to be set up according to John Cariani, it's a play that is supposed to happen, like all of these scenes are happening. I think there's total 9 scenes, because there's 4 and 4, and then this intro, this overarching plot that's happening, and the prologue, interlogue, and epilogue. That's, I think it's 9, it might be 10, but it all happens within like a 15-minute span, just around 9 o'clock in the middle of nowhere, Maine, hence the name Almost Maine. And so, right, like it just kind of introduces this whole thing that, I don't think gets mentioned a lot of, or is told a lot of stories of interconnecting stories that are interconnected but aren't actually interconnected. They're all just happening all at the same time, and the 2 things that they share are dealing with love, but then also just where they happen to take place, right? Especially in such a small town as described. I currently am working in a smaller town, right? It has, classes with a graduating class of 53, 54, right? The envisioning of this world is would be a graduating class of like 10 at best, right? So we're looking at a fifth or a sixth the size of this town, which is fascinating to think of, right? But yeah, so that's all the envisioning of it. Overall, it's just this really interesting concept of how do we portray love, whether it be the making of love or the falling out of love, in a physical way, right? Because that's what really, all this really comes down to, is right, the trying to express a great deep emotional connection being made or being disconnected through physical actions, right? And so really that's what the play kind of constantly deals with throughout, over and over and over again. So in that sense, it's fun, right? I think you have to envision the play much like the movie Airplane, right? The 1980 with Leslie Nielsen, right? Because as John Cariani mentions, if you buy into the cheesiness and you act in that way, and you make this humorous, it doesn't work, right? It just doesn't, it all kind of falls apart. But if you play this straightforward and you play this in a very, hello cat, in a very direct and like you're experiencing it, then it all makes sense, right? No matter how cheesy and how terrible it is, it all ends up making sense if you play it that way, right? Much in the way that, you know, the movie Airplane, I love it so much, right? If you were to buy into and have everyone act in a comedic role as comedians, then the movie wouldn't make sense. But because they buy into this straightforwardness, it all works, and it becomes hilarious, or becomes enjoyable because of that straightforwardness, right? And part of that actually has to come down to, I would argue, the described setting and who these people are, right? In John Cariani's vision of this, it is a play that is, you know, they're not caricatures, right? These are just people, right? They just happen to be living in Maine, right? In small town Maine. And, you know, these are people that, you know, it's arguably a dying town that's poor, right? That doesn't have a lot going for it. And so the people that are here still are people that have always been here, right? And, you know, there's nothing that they haven't heard before. And so, you know, all they can do is just keep a straight face and continue moving forward with life, right? Especially, like, it's also described that these actors are designed to be, the characters are designed to be kind of late 20s to early 30s, right? So they've kind of hit this point in life in which I would argue, and as I've been seeing it in my own life, is thinking that they should be somewhere that they're not, right? The argument is, you know, they should always be something, or they should be making something of themselves. And these people are, but not in the same way that other people do, right? They're still in their small town that they probably grew up in, right? They're still with the same people that they've known for all 20 plus years of their lives, right? And so because of that, there's this feeling that, like, you're stuck, but really you're not inherently actually stuck, right? It's just that things are changing as we see, right? The way that love's expressed and the way that love grows, it changes, and you know, you get to experience the world in a completely unique way. But, right, it's difficult, right? Because you think that you've seen it all, because you've been in the same spot forever. Yeah. Yeah, it's not, Almost Maine is not a complicated play, right? It's not. It's you know, you have a lot of freedom in the way that you go about doing it, right? So it's not complicated. So you have the opportunity to make it fun. You have the opportunity to make it what you want. I remember, because it was my sophomore year, I'm trying to think. I think my older sibling was the stage manager, and I remember they were initially not very happy about the production because, I mean, there's inherently not a lot going on, and so it doesn't feel like you're doing a lot, right? Which then actually goes back into this whole thing about, you know, going with, you know, the whole sort of thematic pieces of the play, that, like, sometimes big things are happening, it just doesn't feel like it's big. So that's Almost Maine by John Cariani.